Hello, and welcome to the Mr. 50mm YouTube channel. I'm Mr. 50mm. In today's installment of How did Mr. 50mm burn a hole in his wallet this time, we have the Nikon D200 featured here. Although, to be honest, I actually didn't end up spending too much money on this, or any money really. I did some trades to get the camera, but as a result of the trade and the result of me getting another Nikon body, I ended up buying more f-mount lenses, so hole still burnt. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. For today's video, we're going to go over why I think the Nikon D200 is the best camera that you could buy overall to experience that CCD goodness that we all seem to be craving. And I have many cravings. So let's get into it. What is the Nikon D200? In short, this is the Nikon D200. In long, it's a DSLR introduced on the 1st of November 2005. It's a prosumer level DSLR with an APS-C size sensor, which of course is a CCD sensor. It packs 10.2 megapixels, so sour. And the sensor here is made by Sony. It's got a very catchy model name, and that model is the ICX483AQA. Catchy. The body is a magnesium alloy construction, and it feels excellent in the hands. Metering is done by Nikon's 1005 pixel CCD sensor. Autofocusing is accomplished through the Multicam 1000 unit, which has 11 AF points, but only one of them is a cross-type sensor, and it's placed in a weird spot, top left corner of the frame. Weird, right? Just kidding. It's dead center of the frame. It's always dead center. Now, the shutter is good for 30 seconds to 1/8,000th of a second. Flash sync is good till 1/250th of a second, and the camera can additionally shoot at 5 FPS for 22 RAWs or 37 JPEGs until the buffer depth is reached. Of course, this is a traditional DSLR, so you do get an optical finder. And that finder is a 95% coverage. Not as good as 100, but it does the job. Now, the mid-2000s DSLR sub-memory, of course, is CF card. And it's powered by Nikon's EN-EL3Es. The camera's rear screen is a 230 K-dot unit, and it measures in at 2.5 inches. When the camera was new, this was $1,699 USD, or $2,720 in now monies. Lastly, it weighs in at 830 grams, roughly 1.8 pounds, or about 0.83 plena. Shooting with the D200. We'll start this off with ergonomics and feel. Given that this is a prosumer level camera, the build quality is exemplary. The magnesium alloy frame gives this camera some solid feelings. The camera itself is adorned with weather sealing, so when it's paired with the correct lens, it'll be fine in weather. The grip also has excellent depth, and the rubber on mine at least is still in great shape, so it's comfortable as well, despite its DSLR weight. Now, this camera is equipped with a top display, as you can see here, and it provides a lot of information at a quick glance. General camera settings, modes, it's also fairly large. The backlight is easy to toggle, you just do that, and you can see it's green. Not as nice as Canon's Pro Blue, but pretty good. Oh, actually you might not see it. Let me turn off one of the lights. There you go. It's a bit dim, but it works. Here's where the D200 gets awesome. The control layout. Most everything feels like a deliberate and calculated placement. Controls can be quickly accessed and manipulated and are placed in a way that feels very, very natural. On the right of the camera, while looking at the back, of course, you can see there are a number of controls. You got 2 control dials, one here, right by my thumb, and the other one right underneath the shutter button. It's very quick and excellent to use. Things that require a little more deliberate changing are usually moved to the left of the back of the camera, but manipulation is simply also intuitive. For example, if I want to change the shooting mode from single shot, but I didn't read the manual, and try to just twist this thing up here, it's locked in. But you'll notice there's a button right here where my index finger is. I can then press the button and rotate that dial, changing the shooting mode. It's fairly nice, and it's something that kind of comes naturally because you just notice that it's close to that thing you want to change. You press it down, and it doesn't bounce back like a button. It feels like an interlock. So when you press it, you hold it, you twist the thing. Action is actioned. It's an excellent camera and excellent ergonomics. Now, another thing that feels almost too natural is the buttons here and there. The middle button, that is an aperture preview. It's always kind of being that way, but the second one, that's a button that you can remap. I have it set so that you can instantly change the metering to spot metering, and it's awesome. The buttons themselves are so well placed, I barely think when I'm using them. Honestly, the level of customization on the buttons isn't as complete as modern mirrorless cameras like the A7 that I'm shooting on, but the things that you can change, they make a lot of sense, and it doesn't actually overload you with a million options. One of my favorite things actually is the ability to map the center D-pad so that you instantly zoom in on a photo on image review. And it just makes things a little quicker when you're having a look at the camera. So just to zoom in, you get to check the things you got to check, and you're in and out. Let's see if I can quickly demo that. All right, so I have a random image pulled up here. I'm gonna press the center, and there it is. Image is zoomed in. You can check what we got to do, and then go back to shooting. Now, this is, of course, a stills DSLR. Therefore, the menu is fairly simple. We'll have a look. There it is. If you've used literally any other Nikon in modern times, you've been exposed to this layout, and you won't get lost. And it also responds quickly, which is good. Now, while the rear screen at 230K dots doesn't sound impressive, it's actually more than enough for a lot of basic things. Your image review is going to be fine. The JPEGs or your RAWs will render quickly and zoom in to be able to see details properly. And again, it's just reasonably good viewability. When it comes to taking pictures, the camera, it's good. That 10 megapixel CCD, it isn't going to stack up against, a modern 26 megapixel CMOS. But for the experience that is CCD shooting, it is excellent. The images that come out, they're still excellent for web use, for printing. Really, the only downside is that you can't do the extreme croppage that you would on a modern camera. But other than that, it's a perfectly good CCD. And like with other cameras of the era, the high ISO, it's not that great. But that was never really the strong point of CCDs anyway, so presumably everyone that's watching this video already knows that. In general though, like I say in most of my other videos, if you run the image through modern noise reduction software, you'll get a good image back. And I still shoot with this camera at like the high ISO settings, and like I said, run it through noise reduction, and you get yourself a usable image. It'll remove the splotchy color noise that kind of dominates sometimes, and you get random pattern noise, and it looks pretty nice. It leaves you an image that's still good to go. Now, you expect probably the dynamic range of an older CCD camera to be about as wide as a penny is thick, but it's really not that bad. This camera, you gotta shoot it basically with the intent to save highlights and to pull up shadows. If you do that, it'll do you a solid. Either way, the CCD will deliver an excellent image with good color rendition and excellent sharpness, lens notwithstanding, of course. Additionally, AF performance is solid. Again, best to use that center cross-type point and do some recomposition, but if you do need to use the other points, they also seem reasonably fast, reasonably reliable as well. Keep in mind, like I said, center is the only one that is a cross point. It is extremely accurate, and the other ones are either vertically or horizontally sensitive. That said, Again, overall, I'm happy with the AF system, and it's snappy and predictable. Now, again, it isn't like a modern AF system that can spot sheep mustaches from 200 feet away, but if you do need to shoot some sports and carefully plan your shots, you can still get some fine images out of this camera. And at 5 FPS, it's got some reasonable speed, of course, for the time. Let's give it a go. Excellent. Like I said, 5 FPS by modern times isn't that fast, but yes, with careful timing, with good practice, you can still get some action shots. This camera was, after all, built as a sports shooter on the cheap. Just takes a little more effort than your standard point and click nowadays. What makes the D200 the best camera for experiencing CCDs? This is where it gets interesting. First, I want to say this camera is ubiquitous. Remember that $16.99 introductory price? These things sold. And why wouldn't they? At the time that this thing came out, more than a couple reviews called these mini D2Xs, the flagship camera of Nikon at the time, singing the praises of the D200. As a result, there are so many of these units still working and around today. If you look online at eBay, like I'm looking at eBay Canada, I get almost 200 hits. And I bet if you're in Freedom Land, America Town, you're gonna get even more, since not all sellers ship to Canada. Now, if you're looking at MPB, there are more than 30 units available, and KEH has some too. Now, along with being able to literally trip over these if you're not too careful, they're cheap. At MPB, you're looking at around 110 USD on average. If you're looking on eBay, you can find these for anywhere between $100 and $175. If you consider the Fujifilm S5 as well, like there are a lot less of those, and they cost more money to get into the CCD game. If you look at something outside the ecosystem of Nikon, you can find the Olympus E300, but there are less of those, and they cost more than the D200 on average. And if you consider medium format CCDs, the D200 is basically free because those are still really expensive. Secondly, the Nikon F mount and the D200 metering system. This means that you can basically mount any F mount lens that is AI or AIS or newer and get coupled metering. So if you want a lot of flexibility with the lens options you have, this camera is it. This mount, this camera with its metering, it'll give you a lot of flexibility. You'll have basically an entire library of first and third generation lenses going back to 1977. And since it's a prosumer camera, Nikon gives you that screwdriver motor for the AF lenses that don't have an integrated motor like you would you'd need to consider if you were getting one of the cheaper options of CCD cameras, like the Nikon D80, D60, D40. These cameras do not have the integrated motor, so any AFD lenses, not gonna AF. Thirdly, power. The Nikon D200 battery is a EN-EL3, and these are used with other cameras, and they're still dirt cheap. So you can still get these cameras fairly readily. And in the event that for some reason, in the future, when they stop making these things, you can actually probably get the battery grip and have it load up with the AA battery tray and still power this camera. Fourth, the RAWs. They are Nikon NEF files. And it just seems like every program on earth can open these things. I'm pretty sure if you put a NEF file into a toaster, it'll open it up just fine. Now, all of these combined together with the fact that this camera body is one of the best handling things ever produced by human hands, and you have a near perfect CCD shooting experience. If the sensor were made by Kodak, I think this would be considered the perfect camera. But it's not, and it's not rare. So what you have is near perfect and very budget friendly. To conclude, you might have guessed, I really like the D200. For me, it's almost the perfect camera. You might have guessed that by the fact that in the last section I said it's almost the perfect camera. But really, I mean it. It's excellent handling, great sensor, it's easily available, and it's cheap. What more could you really ask for? I mean, other than maybe a full-frame version of this camera with the CCD. But other than that, what more can you ask for? But anyways, those are my thoughts on the D200. What do you think of the camera? Do you already have one? Do you want one? Or did you just click add to cart for one of these things? You know, let me know in the comments down below. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Till next time, bye.